Hello, welcome to the Photo Show. Yes, 2 weeks in a row. Unbelievable. We've got another brand new document for you with loads and loads of stuff on, and we've got tons of stuff to get through. We've got 6 questions today, which is really, really cool. If you've got a question, send it into BritishTechNetwork@gmail.com, and I'll get it answered for you. I saw Vaughan in the week who had his question answered, and he was over the moon with the answer, so that's lovely. So let's kick it off then with the news. First news story then is about Vogue. Now, lots of photo shoots have happened, and loads of photographers, the Baileys, etc. of the world have done their shoots for Vogue. But Vogue have got a stance this week about environmentalism. They are planning to show in the Italian Vogue absolutely no images at all that are photo shoots and that kind of stuff. The reason being, they want to reduce the environmental impact on the planet by not having any photo shoots for a month. So they're putting on art instead. So all the pictures that you see inside will either be library photos or they'll be drawings. Anything else is advertisers and that kind of stuff. Well done, because the entire article, or the entire issue of the magazine in Italy is going to be focused on how the fashion industry can be more sustainable. Articles about clothes recycling and that kind of stuff. And I'm guessing it's a bit more than just, I'll finish with my Dolce & Gabbana original. It cost me £8,000, so I'm going to pass it on to someone else. And also Condé Nast have said that they are going to only use compostable plastics in their magazine wrappings in future. I've got to say, why wrap it at all? Because the one thing I always do when I get a magazine is I always shake it over the top of the bin and chuck away all the annoying crap that's on the inside of it. The pictures on the front are actually really nice. They're good bits of artwork. Not that one, because that looks like a model being hung by the neck. But the other two were quite pleasant. So there you go. Well done, Vogue Italia, and well done, Condé Nast, for thinking about the environment. More to do, but never mind, Next one. Canon have unveiled a robotic camera for sports photographers. This thing is, I think, probably meant to run along on a thing that's automatic, maybe. It's supposed to be incredibly fast and incredibly mobile. The emphasis is on the distribution of the weight. It's not about the weight itself. So this thing is at the point of balance, and it will be very, very good at balancing your camera on the back. If you want to use it, it's only going to be weighted to work with the Canon 1DX or the 1DX Mark III. So you're going to have to have a pretty expensive camera before you can use it. And there's a choice of lenses that you can have on it as well, which give it the perfect balance. If you get that wrong, I'm afraid it's out of balance and it might be a bit unwieldy. It's built, unquote, for high-speed sports. And they've described it as compact and lightweight. Well, when you look at that and you see the size of a 1DX Mark III against it, that is an awful lot of metal on that panhead. I can't see it being particularly light and mobile. But there you go, what they say it is. Price, no price. Date, no date, but they're hoping it's going to be out before the Japan Olympics. So that would be really, really useful. When it says no price, I wouldn't worry too much about that, because I can't see this being anywhere near the average pocket hunter. So I won't be buying one, and I don't think any of you'll be buying one. But it's just interesting. Good. Canon have also released a photo culling plugin for Lightroom. Now, this is an awful lot more interesting. It's described as an intelligent AI assistant for Adobe Lightroom. So it saves you time in your post-processing of things. The plugin analyzes your images, and it gives you then coloured flags as to how good your image is, and it grades it. So I think we've got one of the pictures here. You can see that it's got a picture that says it's a bit darker or not very particularly well framed, whereas the other two are pretty good. And it's given it a cross as opposed to a tick. Now, you then can grade it as a low to high as to what you think the image is, and you can override the manual settings that you're going to get from the plugin. But and you can also reset the parameters that they will then go into to make the decision, so you can change up your own. It's quite interesting. I quite like the idea of this. This is so you shove your images in, and it helps you go through and say, right, here's the 10 that we think are the best that you should send to the client as examples, and get rid of the others. I do this process already, in that I'll scroll through images where, no, I haven't really quite got that one right. It's not a wow image, and I'll move on to the next one. If it works, it's great. When's it going to be available? It's coming in March, and it's going to be available by the Adobe Exchange app market, but there's no price for it. It'll probably be, I would have thought, a subscription model to go along with your existing subscription. It may come free if you've got a Premiere kind of price plan with Adobe. Who knows? But there's no word on that, so that's not a thing. Don't worry if you think about it. But it'll be interesting to see, and I'll be willing to have a go with it and definitely have a play with it, and I hope they send me something that I can actually have a go with. Now then, do you fancy giving up everything, running away from the wife and the kids or the husband and the kids and joining a millionaire and touring the world at his behest with nothing more than an iPhone and being his photographer? Well, that's happening with Matthew Lepre. He is a millionaire who has got his money from e-commerce and through an awful lot of stuff to do with Instagram. And his mate used to take all of his pictures, who travelled around with him. But apparently now he's too busy. So what he needs is a photography assistant. So providing you've got a phone, which I'm sure he'd give you a phone, he will pay for you and a friend to follow him all around the world, taking pictures of him so that they can go on the Instagram feed. And he's willing to pay you $55,000. Yeah. Now, that's quite a lot of money. That's quite a lot of money. But I don't know if that's American dollars or Australian dollars, because Matthew Lepre is an Australian. So it might be 55,000 Australian dollars, which is not as much, but you are getting a tour of the world free of charge with a mate. I've had a word with the wife. She says no, so I won't be doing it. But the other thing is, it could be a bit of a publicity stunt, because one of the things you've got to do is you've got to like him, subscribe to him, follow him, all that kind of stuff, and then he'll pick a winner from it. It might be a stunt just to get someone, give him the 55 grand and not actually take him around the world. Who knows? But his mate being too busy, I'm a bit suspicious, but we'll see. It should be all right. Next one is that DJI are making a remote control car. Okay, there's loads of remote control cars out there, the 10 a penny. But the thing with this one is it's got cameras built in. If you actually look at the way the patent's filed, they've actually got one of their X5 cameras on the top of it. And the other thing that's quite interesting is that all of the wheels are independently steerable. So this thing is going to get into a lot of places where a standard remote control car can go. I'm expecting as well also that the suspension is amazing, because if you look at the way this is suspended on the patent drawing, it does look amazing. It's probably an active suspension system as well, so it keeps it incredibly stable as a gimbal. With a really good camera and a really stable suspension system and the versatility of it as it turns, I think this could be an absolute wowzer. Cost, no date. It's only a patent, but it could be pretty good if it gets out. It looks like it could be a really nice addition to their lineup. Good thinking. Now, you know, when you're in the movies and you see like the CIA have got an image of someone and they're saying, oh, click enhance. So they do one button push and it enhances the image and it comes up and it looks amazing. Well, Pixelmator Pro reckons that they've started down that path. Life imitating art, imitating life. So this picture is on their new Pixelmator Pro application, and it's a nice picture. There we go. It's superb. But what they've done is they've zoomed in on it and blown it up to 1920 by 1080, and there's the picture itself. And you can see that when you crop in, it actually gets pretty grainy pretty quickly. If you've got the video version of this, then you'll see what I'm talking about. It is pretty ropey. Now then, this is the next bit, and this is quite impressive actually. If you run it through Pixelmator Pro and do the video enhance on it, that's what it looks like. That's actually quite a step change. That is a big difference from where you were to start with. So if this technology works and they can keep it moving, it could actually signal the fact that you could get the old movies of the FBI and CIA enhancing images. Could be coming an awful lot closer. I'm the one that's always called BS on that. When people say, oh yeah, hit auto enhance and it'll improve it, I'm always going, you can't do that, mate. It doesn't work. No work at all. So well done, Pixelmator Pro. If you there's quite a few people in our Slack facility who are really into Pixelmator Pro, so they're going to be over the moon with that. Time for the gear. Right, the gear, we got a fair old bit on gear as well as. First thing we're going to start off with is the Nikkor 70-200mm lens for the mirrorless full-frame Z series. It's brand new from Nikkor. It is a telephoto lens with a built-in stabilisation. They've described it as a pivotal lens for those shooting action, wedding, events, news, wildlife, and portraits. Gotta say, never shot a portrait with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. I'm presuming it's going to be an outdoor thing, which is not really portrait. It's certainly not studio portraits. But there you go. It's an onboard stabilization, works really well on the Z series, and also it works in parallel with the Z series camera stabilization. So you've got in-camera stabilization and lens stabilization, and it's saying that the two working together will give unparalleled stability, which is pretty impressive. The one thing I will say, though, is if you watch out for stuff like this, if you're shooting video with this camera, you want to turn the image stabilization off, especially if you're on a tripod. It'll help a little bit when you're freehand, but if you stick it on a tripod, then you're going to find that the stabilization system keeps moving and the image is worse. I found that quite a lot. And we'll come back to that in one of the questions, actually. The USP of this lens is about the shortwave refraction. So what it's saying is there's a specialist dispersion on this, which allows for the glass featuring characteristics that greatly refract light with wavelengths shorter than that of the blue light. By controlling short wavelength, that light that is difficult to compensate, the lens can be more effectively collect light of various specific wavelengths and achieve a higher precise chromatic aberration compensation, unquote Nikon. The images are lovely, I've got to say. They're really good. The bokeh on them in the background, when you've got a couple of the shape of the blurs, there's one of here we go. That blurring in the background is really excellent. If you look at the circular blurring on the water droplets when you're getting close, it's actually excellent. It looks a really cool lens. I like it a lot. If you want to buy it, well, it's got a super silent motor for video focus, so that's worth paying a bit more for. And they're saying it's £2,600. And it's out next month in February. I think that's a bit over the odds, because if you go into the Canon range, you're talking about 1,300 to 1,700 for the 70 to 200 millimeter lens. And if you get into the Sigma 70 to 200, that's incredibly good value. And I think that we reported last week, that's only down at below the £1,000 mark. So that's a pretty expensive lens. It might be nice. It might have good stabilization. It might have a super silent motor, but whether that's worth an extra £1,000 to you plus, I'm not entirely sure. Not for me, anyway. Another one that's happened then this week, Nikon have released the D780. It's the new camera in their lineup. Where's this hitting? I don't know. I'm not a great Nikon user anyway, so I've never had one. But I would have said this is probably aimed at about the 5D market, something like that, perhaps. It's a full-frame DSLR. Pretty similar in size and weight to the D750 that it's going to be replacing. 24 megapixel backlit sensor, optical viewfinder, which is nice. I've got to say, I'm not a great fan of electric viewfinders. I want optical viewfinders, and I don't mind saying I quite like the SLR element still. I know I might be a dinosaur, but I do. Its increased face detection sensors mean that the AF performance is the best that they've ever had. They said that, not me. It improves tracking of moving targets as well because of that, and there's fine-tuning for the option of zoom lenses. It's a first for Nikon, they say, because it's HLG file recording, which is hybrid log gamma, which is the stuff that's used for HDR video. So if you use this and you capture, if you've got an HDR-enabled TV, you should be able to play it with HDR enabled on the TV that you've got, which is nice. The time-lapse function is internal to the camera. Now, before, you had to choose before you started where you'd have to set that you wanted it to spit out all the files or you wanted it to spit out a finished movie from the time-lapse. You can set the time-lapse functionality on the camera itself and it goes away and it clicks off. But the thing that's nice about this is instead of making the choice beforehand, it gives you both. So you can have the stills and you can have the finished film as well as. 7 frames per second shooting, and they've got a bigger buffer as well, so that means that it's going to fall over a lot later when you're doing that. The other thing that's really cool is it's got an override for the long exposure mode. So typically on most cameras, the sensors are limited to 30 seconds because of temperature control. And once you get past 30 seconds, you get onto bulb, you do get a problem where that you can get them falling over because there's too much heat. This will actually allow you to manually extend the setting up to 15 minutes or 900 seconds. That's massive because what that means is that instead of having to go with bulb and having to open up a stopwatch and then shut it down yourself when you've worked out your exposure off it, you're going to be able to do this with the camera working it out for itself. So that's pretty cool. I do like that. The button layout on the top is really, really simple as well. It's a beautiful looking camera, I have to say. The tilt screen on the bottom is great, and it also flicks under as well, so you can do the selfie thing. It's got enhanced Wi-Fi connectivity, so you can send your JPEGs and your RAW direct to the computers. Carries 2 dual SSD slots that will use ultra high quality or ultra speed class 10 SD cards. If you're going to say that this is close to the 5D, then I'm quite impressed, because this is $2,300, which will be about $600 cheaper, 600 quid cheaper than the 5D equivalent, the Mark III at the moment, Mark IV. That's good. It's pretty good. £2,199 if you want it on pre-order at Wex. £300 to a D850 though. So you get an awful lot more camera at the D850, and it's only 300 quid more. Certainly, if you're talking about the Nikon versus Canon war, I think this wins out. And they've done that quite a lot over the last few years. I didn't swap over to them a few years ago, and I wish I had. But I'm stuck with Canon now. I would have taken too big a hit on the lenses. That's the key part. Well done, Nikon. In response, Canon have got a camera out this week as well. Here it is. It's beautiful. Now, I had the 1DS Mark II when it first came out. It cost me £8,000, and I loved it. And I shot the hell out of it. I did loads and loads of work with it, and I loved shooting it. Ian Lewis has currently got it. He's looking after it for me, but I did enjoy that camera immensely. This is the latest iteration in that line, the 1DX Mark III. It's not out as yet, but it's £6,499 at Wex if you want to pre-order it. Massive upgrade from the Mark II, 20.1 megapixel sensor, and it's got a 5.5K RAW video recording system. It's also got a deep learning autofocus system. And I did have a Google around. I couldn't find out what that did, but I'm guessing it's deep, and I'm guessing it learns. 20 frames per second lag-free shooting. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting as well with this is if you've got the LP E4N, which is from the 1DX Mark II, then that's a different battery from the LP E19 that this one runs on. Sorry to sound really geeky and specific, but what I'm saying is, if you're upgrading from the 1DX and going to this, do not worry, because that means that your old batteries, if you bought additional batteries for your 1DX, they're still going to fit in and work with this camera. And I think that's pretty huge, because normally Canon are a bit bad on batteries and they try and hawk you out of it. It's a great looking camera. I really like it. It's got all the familiarity of Canon on the back of it, which I've always really loved. And I do like it. One of the things that's interesting is on the autofocus, you always get face detection. Well, on this, they've got eye detection and face detection. So there's actually a little video on the website that shows a woman dancing, and it detects her head. And then when she rotates around and does the dance, it still focuses on her head. And then when it comes back, you see the autofocus zap in right onto the eye. That's really, really cool. So would I replace my FS5 with this? I might. I really might. It does look really, really cool. It would mean one camera on site instead of two, and the quality of the video is amazing. So a purchase may be in my future. Don't tell the wife, though. Next one is the Anker MFI certified flash for iPhone. Now, why is this special? Because this is the first authorized flash accessory for the iPhone. So Apple have said, yep, no problem. Works with the native camera app, and it also works with third-party apps, and it connects via the lighting connector. So basically, you can have a 11 or 11 Pro Max, and you can plug this in and hold it out, and you've got flash on your shots. I'm sure there'll be a mount where you can fit it onto the camera and have it so it's running just like a little compact camera. I think it's really cool. It's a small cube unit. You do get a diffuser with it. I've got a little bullet diffuser that's a Lytra, and I love that. I take that out with me when I go out on social events. Just hold it up, and it really improves your shooting. One of the things, this might be a misprint, I don't know, but this does 10,000 shots per charge. That's amazing for a little small cube. It's going to be fairly weighty, I would have said, because it's mostly battery, but like the Lume Cube and that kind of stuff, this thing's popping off. It depends how loud it goes as well, admittedly. But 10,000 shots per charge is pretty impressive. Wait for it, $49. So an amazing price point as well as. Do I see one of these in my future? Hell yeah. Now, the only thing is, it does say on the story that it only works with the iPhone 11. I don't see how that's really going to be possible. I would have thought it would work with the 10, but I'll have a go for 50 quid and then I'll sell it to someone who's got an 11 for 51 quid. They want. Give it a try. Manfrotto, I don't know this is a story very much. Manfrotto have released tough SSDs. Now, I've got to say, when it comes to the tough market, the only thing that's tough is usually the effect on your pocket. Manfrotto tough SSD cards range from a 64 gig up to 128 gig. They're available on places that you buy your Manfrotto stuff from, but you are paying for the Manfrotto label. Allegedly, these are better because they're warranted from minus 25 degrees to 80 degrees C. Now, I've never heard of an SD card stopping working because of the temperature at that kind of level. I may be wrong, don't get me wrong, but then getting them stuck inside your camera in the Arctic may be fair enough, but I think they would still shoot. It's $115 for the 64 gig SD, $225 for the 128 SD. Do bear in mind as well, though, just to put this into comparison, at $225 for 128 gig SD, that's £20 to £30 on Amazon. So that's the price difference. You're talking about a £200 price difference. Is your bang worth your buck there? I don't know if it definitely is. And the 42 micro SSD, the 128 micro SSD is 42 quid. That's a lot more reasonable of a price. And the compact flash is 150 for 128. So the price-wise, these are a little bit expensive. They've got to be really doing the job, fair enough, but we'll have to wait and see. I won't be buying one. SanDisk have released the Tough SSD. Oh, that's the other thing as well. They've put some pictures up, look, of tough environments to make it look like they really do work. Here's the Samsung Tough SSD. I like the SanDisk, sorry, not Samsung. The SanDisk Western Digital showed off a rugged drive at CES. It's an 8 terabyte drive with a transfer speed of up to 20 gigabits a second, so that's pretty impressive. And it's really going to be good if you're out in the field for wanting to back up your stuff. There's no price on it and no date on it because it was launched at CES, but don't expect it to be cheap. The 2 terabyte version that's currently on sale, that doesn't really look like this, is $280. So this is going to be probably in at the $1,000 mark. It's a lot of money. But 8 terabytes of mobile storage that you can watch in a stream, ain't all bad. So there you go. That was the Bob Beach has left the chat room. I'm boring him, obviously. So that was the gear. Let's do the news. Oh, no, we've done the news. Let's do the questions. Duh. Right. First question then. First question is from Brad. Hi, Ewan. Loving the photo show and the fact that it's back and that you're trying to do it more often. I've got a question. I want a decent telephoto lens to shoot video with on my Canon 5D Mark III. I'm not sure I have the funds to go all out and get the 70 to 200mm f2.8 IS. Is there another lens that you'd recommend at about the $1,000 mark that would be a decent substitute? Well, if you don't mind waiting for it, the Sigma that we did last week's only about $1,000, and that would be absolutely perfect for you. The other thing is that if you buy the IS version, you're going to be paying about £1,800. So 1,800 quid is an awful lot of money for image stabilisation if you don't really need it. And if you're shooting video with it, then I would suggest that you don't really need image stabilisation unless you're doing a lot of handheld stuff at an awful long distance, which even then you're still going to get problems with it. I have a 70 to 200. I used to have the IS and I used to switch it off as much as possible. When I broke that and I needed a new one, I got a good use of it, don't get me wrong. But when I broke that and needed a new one, I ended up going to the non-IS version because I just didn't need it. And I saved myself in the process £700. So you're going to be a little more than 1,000 if you get one. If you get one second hand, you'll probably get 1,000 or below. But get yourself the 70 to 200 f2.8 without the IS on, and you'll probably save yourself a load of money and still get good results. Gordon, good evening. Glad to see you back with the photo show again, Ewan. I did ask for questions, and you might regret the fact that you have this one because it's quite long. I've been working on a YouTube channel for the last couple of years called Shropshire Lad. I mainly use a GoPro Hero 7, occasionally a drone. I edit on a Mac and use Final Cut 10, and occasionally do a few tricks in motion thanks to your pal James Rickard and his tutorials. Without blowing my own trumpet, I've got quite competent with Final Cut, but I don't understand the science about the best output and how to crack that one. Well, first part of that question is don't use worried about Final Cut, because one of the problems it does is the bit rating that it gives out for the 720 and for the 1080p Apple Res push-outs is very high. They're really good quality, don't get me wrong, but you end up with massive file sizes. So I wouldn't do that anyway. I'm trying to get the best quality I can, so here's what I've been told. Record in 4K, get the most information and detail. Record in ProTune and use flat. Create project as an intended output at 30 frames per second, Apple ProRes 422. Then I import to Final Cut, edit away, add my color grading and the LUT, then export. I export using compressor. And he sent me a screenshot with the settings, which are too complicated to worry about. My basic question is, what's the best way to get a nice, sharp, vibrant video on YouTube? First thing, shooting 4K, but output in 1080. Most people on YouTube don't look at what the quality is. Most of the content is being consumed on a mobile device, and if their connection is flaky, YouTube will be adjusting the quality of what they look at anyway. So it's an end user issue about what they watch. We push this show out, and all the other shows out at 720p. No one ever makes a comment about quality. As long as you can view it and you can see it, it works. You're going to an awful lot of work here, Gordon, and actually the punters that you've got on the other end of it probably aren't appreciating it. Secondly, if you want to improve the GoPro, then all you've got to do is make sure that you add light, because GoPros don't work well in low light, and that won't change anything that you do. And then with your output, if I do the shows here to make them the smallest file size possible, because we've got to be under 500 megabytes for video shows for it to work in PowerPress, I take all of the videos, bung them into a pre-made template in Final Cut, and then I export them at full res, so they come out as uncompressed MOVs. Then from that MOV, I put them into Handbrake, and I'll use the presets on there, slide my quality setting up to 25 on it in the video channel, and then I'll just bounce them out, and they go to incredibly small file sizes, but the quality maintains. You won't have a problem with it, and then upload it, and it'll be fine. I think you're probably going... I mean, it's nice that you want to do quality, that's okay, but on a private little YouTube channel that you've got 600 subscribers, which is great, well done, but for the amount of effort you put in there, you're not getting anything back from it, and you're certainly not getting any income from Google, because they're a pain in the arse with that now. I would keep it nice and simple, mate. Send me an email and I'll send you through what I use in Handbrake. Next question, Magic Man. I can't seem to get a decent shot of the moon. Have you got tips on equipment and technique, please? First thing, buy yourselves a really long lens, so at least a 200mm lens or more. Thing you got to remember about the moon is it's really well lit, because it's the sun shining directly on it, and it's a highly reflective surface, hence all the issues that we've got with fake allegations from the moon landing pictures and that kind of stuff. The only problem you will have is it moves pretty fast. So you want to keep your exposure probably at about 1/125th, 1/160th. Don't go any lower than that. But because it's so bright, you can keep your ISO down and still maintain that. It won't be an issue. It depends on what you want to shoot. So if you want to shoot something that's really close up of the moon, I've got a Skywatcher telescope and I've got an M2 mount on it, and I can put the camera directly onto that and zoom in and out using it. And I can get super close, get really great quality on the craters and that kind of thing, really in close. If you don't want to shoot that and you want to get a bit of the land in, your problem's going to be the balance, because the moon is so bright and the land will be so dark. So I don't think you're going to get good quality if you use a graduated filter. I think that's a waste of time. The thing you want to do is bracket. So you want a +2 exposure, a 0 exposure, and a -2 exposure. And then those two should combine, or three should combine, to give you a decent look at it. RAW won't be good enough probably to bring it back enough. It'll be so bright that it'll still burn out on RAW. If you want to shoot them in bigger, the thing you've got to remember to do is get a big zoom lens. So 200 to 400 millimeters, what you'll do is, if you have like a castle, for example, and you want the moon to be really big behind it, You need to go further away and use the power of zoom to foreshorten the distance and get it back in. The thing that's nice is because it's so bright, you can shoot at f11, which is going to give you nice sharpness. But if you're struggling, you can always crank your ISO up a little bit and it won't degrade your image that much. Or you can pull your f-stop down to get a bit more brightness as well. You won't be suffering for lack of light when you shoot the moon, mate. Next time you're up, I'll show you what to do, but it's dead easy. But the thing to do is remember that the moon is pretty bright and it does move quick as well, especially if you've got a telescope. You really want to shoot it quite quickly because by the time you set it up, if you put a long exposure on there, the thing will have moved miles. Damo sending a question for the photo show. What about the new camera storage formats that are coming through? I noticed that on the iPhone or other pictures now, it'll replace JPEG, or so it has said. Hayek is what I think it is without looking. Yeah, the HFC stuff and the Hayek stuff, I can't see that replacing JPEG. It's ubiquitous in a lot of image formats for stock imagery and that kind of thing. You might see variations of JPEG, but I mean, they came up with JPEG and then they came up with JPEG 2000, and that's died a death. People like JPEG. I can't see it ever replacing it. And it is a bit of a pain in the arse when you want to drag something out of photos into a third-party application. If it's some applications deal with it, but a lot of them say no, you've got to put it onto the desktop first and then drag it across. Ultimately, Apple will stick with it because it's efficient storage for their devices, but you'll never get away from putting it out into a JPEG for at least 5 to 10 years, and then we'll see. And the last question from Dodsey. I've been looking into setting up a photo booth for an event at the rugby club dinner. The thing, wigs, hats and other fun stuff. It'll be using an old DSLR, good man, because it's going to get trashed, with an iPad that triggers it. I hope that's an old iPad as well, because it's going to get trashed. However, the one thing I have no clue about is the lighting. It will be inside, but where do I start with the scene, lighting the scene? Is a flash enough? Could I light the scene with some LED lights? People talk about ring lights and this type of setup. Are they necessary, etc.? So some of the ones that I've seen, you'll end up with like a big light panel, and if you get like a ceiling light that goes into a fluoro tube, just get an LED one of those and stick 2 of those either side of the camera, pointing in and illuminating the people. Put the camera on manual, don't let them mess around with it. I would say also don't use a flash, because the problem is if they get a little bit close, it'll just blow them out and then the shot will be wasted. So have a bar or something that stops them getting really close to it. Just have continuous light, set it on manual. Let your ISO go up to maybe 800 if you need to. You don't need that much. And just let them trigger it manually off the iPad. But I personally would do continuous light in there. I wouldn't do flash because it's too transient and you've got too many things where they could block it or obscure it. Whereas with LED, you can have multiple sources of light. You're not looking for anything artistic here, right? You just want to light the scene, just flood it with stuff and get it done. Like I say, light panels for ceiling lights. Get 2 of those mounted up on the back of the booth and then a bar so that people can't reach forward and touch them. And you're laughing. If you've got a question, send it through to BritishTechNetwork@gmail.com. We'll read it out and we'll give you an answer as best I can. And if not, then I'll look it up. But I think I can answer them. I've done pretty well so far. We'll see you again next week. If you want to follow the network, then you go to Brit. Oh, no, I'm wrapping up and I shouldn't be wrapping up because we've got a competition. Aha. Thanks to Datacolor and to Digital Glue, who are the people that promote them. We've got 2 of these to give away. Now, if you haven't read my review of it, I suggest you go online and have a look at the review. This is probably the best screen calibrator I've ever used. It was well worth it, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it. And they've given 2 of these to us to give away. So all you've got to do is go to our YouTube channel at British Tech Network and find it. Find this show, this very show, or next week's or the week after, because we're drawing this at the end of February. Like, subscribe, and then I'll pick someone from the likes and subscribe, and then you'll send me an email, and then we'll send you one of these, okay? So this is 158 quid's worth of stuff, so well worth it, and it is the best screen calibrator I've ever used. Simple as that. I'll put the link in the show notes to get to the YouTube page. And as with all the shows, there's no show notes, but there is for this show. So there'll be a link in the thing to go to get the show notes, and also then to go to the YouTube channel. Thanks to TSO Host for supporting us. If you've got a Mac, don't forget that iMen Macs can fix it as well. and make sure you give him a shout out on the socials. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back next week with a photo show, as promised. If you've got a question, get it sent in. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening even. Duh.